people? It's Solarkidd. This is the Other Side of the Sun podcast, and I got my bra Ziyaad or carrots. Otherwise,
salute. I'm good, man. It's been a while since I had that nickname, but you know,
yeah. When last did anyone call you?
Blondie, Ginger. The worst one was Archie. And then,
Archie. Yeah, no. Hey, bro, I also had some weird like nicknames growing up. One lady used to call me Keenan Afro, especially you know, being as white as I am.
Pushing your afro, it took you a while to embrace the fro, isn't it?
It took me years, bro. It took me probably till I was about 18, 19, because even my grandmother, she was like, what did you do to your hair? You used to have such nice hair, and look at now how it looks here. And I'm like, yo, I don't know. You must speak to this God of yours, because he decided to make me white with the
White
afro.
Jesus doesn't like afros. White Jesus doesn't like afros.
Yeah, white Jesus don't like afros, bro. You know, it's all blonde and blue. You know what I mean? But how are you, bro? How you been, man?
I'm good. I'm well, you know, as good as an unemployed motherfucker can be in the COVID. But lastly, you know, applying for jobs, just, well, you know, I think trying to get my papers right.
No? You're not
What's that?
Online, because you were doing teaching before, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, even with the online, you got to do like the little TEFL or something like that. Or, so I'm like, fuck, spend money on, let me just finish. I'm trying to finish my master's. I've been trying to do it since 2012. So,
but now, because when you came back from your travels, you did a degree, isn't it? You finished a degree.
Yeah, well, I did anthropology, yeah.
So you got the degree in
yes. Yeah, well, the honors in anthropology. I think overseas it's like the same as a degree is usually 4 years.
So doesn't that count as like with TEFL and all that?
It does count. If I want to teach, the best option for me without having to study extra stuff is to go overseas. But yeah, so I was planning on doing something like that. You know, economics was putting pressure. So I was looking at going to like your Vietnams or Japan, but then COVID struck, even China. So yeah, so that kind of put a little bit of a.
But what about doing it from there online?
Not just online, actually going there.
No, but I'm saying, what about actually doing that? Like doing it now?
Yeah, so if you do online, they want you to do like a TEFL if you don't have like an English qualification.
Kind of English degree or okay.
Yeah, exactly. So you're stuck between going and doing that, or just fuck. What can you do, man? You gotta hustle. I'm lucky because my co-parent kind of has been keeping the house down. So it's allowed me to at least try to finish up. I think even this year, I'm gonna just try and finish up my degree and try and get into the university space. I think that's
the masters will be also in anthropology, like, or just.
Nah, it's in education. So when I was doing anthro, I was looking at like kind of sex work, activism. I was selling clothing when I was studying, and that's what introduced me to the whole.
Get into sex work, what?
I think even now, I think I should get the OnlyFans, dad bod vibes. I was doing some research for one of my friends, because she's also like one of my sex worker friends, and she's also like, fuck, this COVID thing's really fucking us up. So
well, it depends where you are in the world, because you know, like there's sex workers that
even in tough times there's always demand for that thing. So even but the problem is the safety level, so it's much safer doing it online.
That's
so she's a bit of an old mama, so trying to get and also I'm like, I know about OnlyFans, but I didn't actually know. You know, so just doing the research and seeing, okay, you know, basically it's the same for everything. There's in Afrikaans they say elke pot het sy deksel. So there's a fit for everything. Now, but not everyone wants that perfect Instagram thing. Some people want
my international viewers. Every pot has a lid.
Right. So people want freaky shit. Some people don't even want to see all that nudity. They want to see normal everyday things, you know, cooking, working out, washing. People with foot fetishes want to see you fucking painting your toenails, shit like that, you know. So you've got to find your little niche, and that's what I was trying to help her with. And I was also considering, let me get my online skills up. But I was thinking, for me, I'd rather push in the teaching zone. That's actually where my passion is more, especially around history, those kind of things. I think it's so
Yeah, so let's
important.
get into that, man. Tell me, how did you come to that? Like, what's your background growing up a bit? I know you went German school, isn't it? In high
Right.
school,
Yeah. So the other people like to joke, and I think R.I.P. Figaro. You know, he was so he was a year ahead, but
that
you
hit
know,
me hard,
it
eh?
was like a social experiment, man. You know, like the fact that they could take us from our kind of so-called colored communities and
Oh,
black
so you
communities
also
to,
you got picked? Were you got picked and
yeah,
then
yeah,
you?
yeah. They
Okay.
still do it. It's
Is
still
it?
going on. They just changed the name. You know, so
I was
imagine
not
being
because
called.
I didn't get picked. So like, cause my teacher never used to like me, so she picked Vicky. She picked Vicky, oh Jeremy, Damien Falkveen. Who else?
Yeah,
There was a few of them that
yeah, yeah,
Rian Hassan, I think also.
yeah.
And then
But
that
I
was
mean,
my
it
class.
basically was up to that. You know, I actually spoke to Heather Carolus like
Mm.
a couple of years ago. I interviewed her, and she was saying that actually they would come from grade one already. They were looking at the kids and trying to pick the best of the best in a way. So it wasn't just like from
She's
grade
together
four.
now, yeah.
Yeah, Heather, Mrs.
Yeah, I know
Carolus.
because to me she was Mrs. Carolus.
Yeah, look, she's very cute. She's the principal of St. Barnabas.
Okay.
So I went to, because I was trying to look at the angle for research, and I was thinking, actually, let me go back to the people in my community that had an influence on my life and look at them now and like try to like coming back almost like I'm a teacher now. So let me go back to a teacher that had an influence on my life. Okay, she's also a principal. Maybe she can hook me up with a job or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, but just interesting to hear from her how, as teachers, they were very disappointed that this Germans who was coming and taking the best kids that they worked with and molded, and now they were, you know. So it was something that I didn't know before.
But why?
But I
But
think it was also.
why would they be disappointed? Because like if you think of it in the bigger scheme of things, bro, especially for you guys and the guys who did get to go, it's like you've been taken from our colored, you know, like you know, government education to like a higher standard and level of education. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
everyone
but
I
you
know who
also
went
get
to
to.
those schools of, you know, they went on to
But
university.
look how many people got fucked up, and not many made a good thing out of it. To make it, you have to actually assimilate into that German culture
Yeah, I
and
remember.
forget about your own culture, because your culture was not affirmed. Number one. So even though you were getting a better standard, it was at a cost. So it's the same the world all over. If you look at all these elite schools, going there from a poor background, a migrant background, a non-white background, a different class background, you have to assimilate to that kind of order to be successful. So that's why many people struggle, because you weren't, and for me, that was also the case. I didn't finish there because I also felt that, no, man, this is cuck, man. Actually, you know, I'm not, and I think I
You
felt
still
much
speak
better
German. You
going to
still
like your
understand.
Model C. I mean, you went to Florida Park, and then I went to Mondio. I felt much more liberated because there were more people of color. Culturally, you were affirmed. And I think that's so important, that balance, not just the academics, that culturally, sports, whatever, you need to be affirmed because you grow as a person in those things, you know. And I see it as a teacher. It's not just the classroom.
What year did you leave the German school?
I think I was in grade 10. I finished in grade 10 there. So then that was like 97, somewhere like that.
Oh, so you did your last
And
2
then,
years.
but I was still in contact with people who like Kurt and Vicky, and then who were still there. You know, not so much Jeremy and Damien, but yeah, maybe through the cricket. Jeremy, I see him now. He's a bigger Khoisan guy. Good to see. Well, more, yeah, indigenous. He pushes the
Okay, I
vibes.
didn't know. I didn't actually know.
He's,
I know that he's
yeah,
been
yeah,
involved
yeah,
in.
yeah, he's pushing.
I
His
know he
own,
was
you know,
involved
it's
in
so
the church,
difficult when
a lot, but I didn't know about the.
yeah, but more now of pushing on indigenous, like Camissa, like the stuff I was telling you about, like Patrick Mallet, the whole thing. Instead of talking about ourselves as colored, choosing a name that we want for ourselves, like this Camissa or Camissa, makes a lot more sense because it's not something that was put on us, or you know, it allows us to explore that African identity, the multiple streams.
So
we
wait,
come
before we get to Camissa, I just want to finish your schooling and then into university.
Okay.
And how did you like? Because you were, I know you were always interested in knowledge and like seeking knowledge.
Yeah. But I think I was not on the right political, if I could say that, path. There was a lot of, I think there's a lot of ignorance in colored communities about history, about politics. So that always like that. The same thing like before we went online, the whole thing about the hair and the whiteness, the internalized white supremacy, basically, was quite strong, and or different, or like in my case, because I looked so white, it was like not trying to be extra colored, trying to always prove that you're not white. So in my schooling, in some parts it was good leaving the German school and going to Mondial where this coloredness could express itself. But then there wasn't like good advice. Like most people always, because you kind of so-called school smart, they put you on these subjects like math, science, biology. And I think I realized when I finished school, I wasn't really into, I didn't know what I wanted to do. No one said, hey, there's this thing called anthropology you can study. You're interested in people, history, sex, food. You can study this thing. Whereas it's very different in white communities, because if their parents went to varsity, they know that. In ours, it's like, no, you can be a teacher, you can be a nurse, or if you're very smart, be a doctor or scientist. But okay, be a teacher, or don't be a teacher. You're going to be poor. Yeah,
our
or don't be a
uncles
teacher.
and
don't be a teacher, you're going to be poor.
Our whole families were teachers. My uncles, you know what I mean. They're all teachers.
Exactly. So I mean, but even they would be so difficult to get good advice from them because they also never had it. They were all new into this thing. That 94 moment going to the early years of democracy, where now we have access to space, certain amount of access, not full access, but in theory you have the opportunity. So I think, for me, I wasn't sure. A friend of mine went on a kibbutz, and then I also decided with another thing. Let's do this thing. But I didn't know what it was all about. I didn't realize it's part of the whole settler colonial fucking infrastructure. It was like only when I got there, I realized, shit, this shit is fucked up here, and that was just before the second Intifada. So going there as a kind of Muslim, but not a practicing Muslim, it was kind of strange.
Wait. What? The second what?
Intifada, so the uprising. So you had one happening in like 1987 where Palestinian people started to resist.
Okay.
And so Yasser Arafat is very important in that thing. And then things started to calm down around 2000, but then...
You in Israel and you Muslim as well, and you on the kibbutz.
Yeah. And they were like, what the fuck are you doing here? I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I tried to go there, work, travel, and then go to London. That was the whole vibe. Go there, work, go to London, work and travel. That was like kind of how the brainwashing.
Where in Israel was it?
So I was in Palestine. So for exactly the same thing. Like I don't even speak about the country called Israel because it's a pariah. It's not a real thing. It's a fake colonial thing. Yeah, but so in Palestine, in the north part, it's a place called Nahariya, close to Nahariya. It's in the north, very close, like Lebanese borders, like right there. There used to be bombs dropping, but it was like not heavy. It's like a rocket launch. They bomb each other, but it's like a little game. Like no one gets hurt. Then they kill one person. Then the opposition kills two. Then they, so the Israelis always try to kill more. And that was the case there. It wasn't yet. It was calm because now they were already discussing in 2000. They were discussing the Palestinian Authority, and then that's when Ariel Sharon came in, and the second Intifada basically started. The second uprising.
Yeah.
So since 2000, basically, there's been a huge increase in hostilities, in violence, in them increasing these settlements, which is the main thing, that causes
So what
problems.
is the kibbutz? Like, what was the point of it? Is it just to get
kibbutz? What's interesting about it is it's like socialism. So many of the people who started the state of Israel were actually socialists. So it's like a kind of self-sufficient community where it's basically serving all your labor and stuff goes towards the country in a way. So each community there does its own thing. They grow food. They might be involved in some kind of business enterprise. It's almost like a little socialist escape from the usual capitalist situation. So if you is the state of Israel, you can go to a kibbutz anytime and work there and volunteer. You call the volunteer. You do get paid, but
what must I do with it next?
Just leave it there. Or put it here. So yeah, so what was good for me was just learning about actually there's another way from this capitalist thing. Because I think when we were growing up with the propaganda that was around, let's say, I remember always the movies and stuff was always like this, communist or capitalist. a doctor gets paid the same as a cleaner. That's all you ever hear. You never hear anything deeper, like your healthcare is covered, your education's covered, your food is covered, you know. So I think I was always kind of leaning towards socialism, but I never had anyone to explain. Remember, it was illegal in South Africa.
Yeah.
Basically, communism was associated with terrorism.
Yeah.
So even some of my family members who were in the struggle, no one really spoke about it or said, hey, this is happening. I think I only had one uncle that kind of conscientized me a little bit about things. Like, you know, using words, like using the K word, like how people use so freely, the rest. And I only had one person in my family who said, no, don't say that. And actually broke it down to me. Why? Okay. And then I started to get more, you know, so coming back from the kibbutz and then realizing, oh shit, the only person who ever, it was my grandfather. He was like, when I said I'm going to he's like, you can't for the Jordan gaan werk. He's like, you're gonna go work for the Jews. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go travel. What the fuck? You know, only afterwards I realized, oh shit, actually,
Yeah,
I was going there actually helping kill or helping to oppress the Palestinian people, you know, in a way. So I think that got me started in a way. But then obviously you're now young, you need work. I didn't study. And then I started working in the casino. Because on the kibbutz also I met people.
Yeah.
So this traveling thing kind of got to me. I was like, fuck, I want to do this traveling shit. And so then I met people who had worked on ships, people who had done other jobs. And I was like, okay, let me do this casino vibe thing. Maybe I can do the work on the ships. And eventually I did kind of work on the ship. But by then I was thinking, okay, shit, I could feel something was lacking. I needed knowledge somewhere. I was trying to read books. You know, remember that time we're reading all these Celestine prophecies, all this energy vibes. And what I really needed was just some.
I actually wanted to get that book again recently, you know. I was thinking about that book.
And what did you think? Was it whack? When I think about it now, I'm like,
I didn't read it again, but I was thinking about it, like, because I remember reading it back then and I'm being amazed because I'm like a spiritual hippie type of guy anyway. So like for me, that was like groundbreaking, you know what I mean?
Yeah. At the time, I'm not gonna lie, for me also. But I think as I started reading more and realizing, okay, like let's say your conversations with God and still feeling like this hunger for certain knowledge is not being filled. And I think for me, really reading like your anthropology stuff and let's say African literature in general, things fall apart.
So you read Things Fall Apart and you got...
but much later in life, not at school. When I was studying,
I write what I like.
So I write what I like, getting snippets of all these things. Let's say, but for me, so Ngugi has a book, Devil on the Cross. And the story behind it is so interesting that he was actually in prison, wrote it on toilet paper. You know, he was like educating people in university, then realized, okay, shit, he's got to be more active. And they made this play. And then he got arrested for making this play. And while he was in jail, he writes this book, Devil on the Cross. It's a great book. Yeah, and it's like a metaphor. They get in this taxi and they're riding. There's a sex worker and it's all these big politicians being corrupt. They go into this big meeting with the Satan. You know, it's like crazy stuff, but simple. And that one book taught me so much about how the world works, how us as Africans, we need to learn from each other's experience, especially where you have settler colonialism. So our South Africa, Azania, that's white people came here, took the land, forced people to land and labor. It's the most important thing. Took people's land and forced them to work, right? So us as so-called colored people, we're fitting in the mix there. We oppressed, but we also we also oppress.
Yeah,
we
were like taken under their wing, you know.
The buffer. So we like your language. We'll just take your language and then we'll use some of all the knowledge Afrikaners have is from us. Everything they know about the veld, what they had to learn from indigenous people. That's a fact, right? So even, I mean, maybe people are watching, they think, who's this white guy saying all this thing? I was gonna look like a white dude. So it's like all these traits, even the thing of having ginger hair, it's an African trait. It's all genetics, you know, and then you go to check Ante New York, which gives you the facts behind it. To say, actually, these things, it's not fantasy. Like, I mean, how we got in touch was this thing about the alien vibes. People like saying, hey, the aliens, that's just to detract, to take away from actually indigenous knowledge. That actually this thing of Kemet to Egypt and right down to the south was not one whole thing, but there was stuff happening all the time. There was trade happening. There was life happening. There was science, technology, all those things were happening. Some stuff had to go underground. Some stuff reemerge. Some stuff gets appropriated. It's the same way when you learn about how Europeans get to dominate the world like they do. Because if you go to 500 years ago, you wouldn't say they would be where they are now. But the fact that you had Arab scholars who were translating some of these works of the ancients, and that went into Latin, and now they start, your Copernicus, all of these guys started to plagiarize, for lack of a
But
better
that's what I'm
word.
saying. There's like large periods in history, especially like between the 1100, 1200, 1300s, when they were in the freaking dark ages. And in Africa, there was fucking universities and like massive trade and like shit going on East Africa, trading with the East, and for thousands of years already. Like, but we don't hear about that in history. You know what I mean? That's like just missing.
Because who's in the academic space? Who's controlling that knowledge?
Yeah.
Who's doing the research?
It's the
Who's
Western
choosing
world,
what to
isn't it?
research? So even when people like you and me make it, we're forced into a certain way of thinking, or forced to do certain research topics that they think are interesting.
Well, think
So
about
that's the
our history
problem.
we learned in Bosman Primary, bro. What did we learn? The
Jan
great
van Riebeck,
Jan van
Nicholas
Riebeck came
Bateman, and
there,
that
he
guy.
saved us, he fucking came on his ship there and he bloody saved the
And
world.
when here's the Bushmen, they had big bombs and this because it could keep fat when they cock like that when you're in grade 1, 2, 3, bruh. And that's just things like, what the fuck? You know, and just think of the anti-black mentality as when we grew up, when we were in school, it was only colored people. Do you remember? I think you guys were in grade 5, we were in grade 4, well, standard 2, when we had the first like black. We were black.
I always tell
never
people
knew
about
what the
this.
first
It's
black,
like,
like, oh yes, it's black kids here, and everyone was like amazed, like, what
yeah,
the
they speak
fuck?
a different
And
language and
Orlando is just there. Deep Cloth is just there. But we never knew. We just knew, don't go to Soweto. That was what you, you know,
and it's right
so it was
there,
so.
bro.
So for me, that's why I love teaching history and love being in the classroom, because it's something you can be really passionate about, because you feel like, yeah, bro, why didn't anybody tell me this? You know, why didn't anybody tell me Afrikaans is a black language?
Yeah.
Why don't we learn they're still suffering with the kind of white Afrikaans now. Still, I mean, my son's schools is like the school governing body. And just to fight to try and get them to do isiZulu or Setswana, or to have a black Afrikaans teacher. It's, you won't believe, that's what in 26 years, they've done nothing. They put some policies in effect, but for you to try and advance those policies, nah, bro.
That's why it's gonna take people like yourself.
Money, like need millions to take them to court, to take them to constitutional court, to have a small change. So as long as no one's interested about that, like I've got my house in the suburbs, my kids go to a nice former white school, I'm happy. You deal with your problems. But your kids come home, they can't speak your language. They're not in place in the school where they are. They're not culturally affirmed, like we were talking about earlier. So it sets another cycle of mental
Ignorance,
ill health, cultural ill health, social ill health. You know that you still have to work through all those things. So it's not an easy journey. It's not an easy job. But I mean, we got to start somewhere. It takes organizing. Let's say you're there out in London town. People are here, but you have kids now. You want a good schooling system. I look at like Abu Akala when he talks about how you went to the Pan-Africanist Sunday school, Saturday school. Those are the things you have to organize. That's what we have. We don't have that.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we don't have it.
Because that's how his mind was shaped, and like, you know what I mean? That's how, you know, young black kids or mixed race kids in London and these areas were educated in Pan-Africanism and these types of things. You know what I mean? And understand these things. It's amazing, bro. So when you finished the casino thing, that's when you came back. You did do time on the ships, nah? And then you came back to study.
I came back from the kibbutz, worked in the casino, and then was working, got in a relationship, doing the fat and sit. Fat and sit is living together without being married, cohabiting. No marriage. Yeah. So, and then realized, okay, shit, I still want to do this. Got on the ships. And when I was on the ship, I was like reading a lot. And actually there in Dover, at the library, getting a library card and just taking books and never giving them back. Donkey the empire.
Like, it's a small price to pay for all the gold and diamonds you took from our country.
So we used to port in Dover, and in Dover I was taking out a lot of books at the library and chatting to people, and they were saying, actually, sociology, anthropology. I was like, fuck, why didn't anybody tell me about these things? I only knew like, okay, psychology, I don't really want it. And then I got into anthro. And then I was like, okay, shit, this is my shit. Let me do a little bit of media studies in case I need a job. And then with anthro, I was like, wow, this is where all the secrets are. This is where all the little nuances of culture and knowledge, real knowledge is there. Okay, it's a bit white tendency still, like,
yeah, so you
but
still
they
have to
also
obviously look
acknowledging
into other, you have to go to the States in order to find, the black documentations of anthropology, because they've
or
already
just
gone in.
indigenous people.
Yeah, or
But you
indigenous
find
people,
that
yeah.
all anthropologists were assisted by an indigenous person. The same like the voortrekkers were assisted by indigenous people to know. So that not black people or indigenous people were always there in the production of knowledge. They weren't always acknowledged, but that's where we today can change things and say, actually, you wouldn't have been able to write this thesis without that person translating that interview for you.
Yeah,
You
or
wouldn't
those
be able to do
hieroglyphs, or you know what I'm saying.
yeah. Exactly. So that was the line I was on. But I was now, because now I was selling clothing, and not so anthropology in the olden days was more you go to this tribe and you research everything about them and they become your tribe that you know everything about. And I was like, okay, shit, I'm in the selling outfits to the sex workers. I'm in this kind of sex worker thing, but from a different point of view, because they my clients. I'm like, especially ones that work online, they need like the sexy outfits. So my dad was doing this for years, and I started doing it with him, like not doing sex work, but selling clothing, making clothing, right? So sexy, like lycra, stretch, one piece, where you like one size fits most. So you maximize, you're not having to make too many, and buying and reselling like stuff from the Chinese, like your shoes, all stuff like say high heels, your lycra, your cat suits, that kind of thing, And that was how I got to know sex workers. And then and I went to like the All African Sex Workers Conference, just like what they call the snowball effect. Like I was interested in researching these people who worked in this environment, and then got involved in the activism side where people were mobilizing for sex workers' rights. And that's what also fed that thing that I was like, yes, you can't just write about things without actually doing stuff, So, and then I started organizing, being involved with the sex worker movement. It's called Sisonke, which means we're all together, or we are one. And yeah, so that was actually where my kind of activism was leading to before I became a dad. And then, became a dad. And then I was like at the crossroads between the masters, finishing the masters on the sex work topic, and the bullshit I was facing with these NGOs, full of white people always talking down, or Western tendencies wanting to tell you what they want to research and not really doing the stuff we wanted to do. So we wanted to, for example,
where did you do your degree? At Wits, no? You went to Wits?
At Wits. So I was doing the research in Hillbrow and around. And like, so things like, the donors will give you money. They want to see signatures. How many people did you have at the meeting? And we were saying, okay, that's good, but you're creating this kind of dependency where people are just coming to the meetings because they know they're going to get 40 Rand and transport and KFC. Why don't we take that money, buy pots, buy the vegetables? You want people to live healthy. Let's teach people how to cook. Let's start a little catering thing. But there was so much resistance to that from the white folks who were in charge of the space, because they didn't actually want the sex workers there. They were happy to put them in their research things, but they actually didn't want them there. It was that. And I was looking at all these contradictions, and I was like, fuck these motherfuckers. And by then, because from my casino work experience, I had been conscientized more on like workers' rights, and I was a union member. We were striking there for our rights. And now in this thing, I was always when I'm somewhere speaking to people that work there. How's the job? How's this? And same thing in the sex work thing or the activist space. Like same bullshit. Like you have to just suck it up for the funders or suck it up for these people who are in charge. And I was like, I wanted to write. I was writing about it, but they don't want to hear that shit. They don't want you to put that shit in your thesis. Like, don't criticize the people. You gotta, we need the funding. You know that vibe. So I was like, nah, this is some bullshit. I wanted to do some revolutionary thing, and at the same time becoming a dad. And then it was like, fuck, a degree in anthropology doesn't get you much because you're competing even with your lecturers for the same kind of. If you're doing it from a consulting point of view, that's who you're competing with. So they also, so
they're not going to give you a gap.
Okay, but at the same time, I was tutoring. So I was tutoring anthropology with the sex workers. Not only were we doing activism, we were also doing like literacy classes and that kind of thing, because they were coming with these big words, decriminalize. And how do you explain in Zulu or Setswana, what the fuck is decriminalize or sex work? What does that actually mean? What's the difference between saying prostitute or sex worker or so those kind of little small differences, but that make a big difference. So if I say sex worker, it shows that I'm actually acknowledging this person is working. I'm not just saying, if you say prostitute, you're assuming automatically it's a woman. But if I say sex worker, it's strippers, it's men, it's anybody. And it's acknowledging that actually there's a demand for this thing, So I think that was and then to cut a long story short, I realized in that time that I loved teaching because I was tutoring. I was doing the English literacy. I was trying to figure out what theory, and it was Paulo Freire and bell hooks to say, okay, pedagogy of the oppressed, or how do you actually think about how you as an individual are also implicated in patriarchy, us as men. We're patriarchs by default, as a light-skinned person, even though I'm not white, people think I'm white, so I have the white privilege, whether I like it or not, so how do I acknowledge those things and at the same time not try to, like this thing of empowering people? No, give people a choice and listen to them and hear what are their needs and share, collaborate, those kind of vibes.
So let me let me ask you this question, because this is something I was thinking about and something I've been through in my life personally. Obviously, being so fair-skinned and not being white. So this is a double, triple, quadruple barrel question. So what was it like navigating the world as, like me and you, if someone looks at us in the street, they're not going to think, oh, this is a brother. If me and you go to Nigeria tomorrow and we walk down the street, you think they're going to say, hello, my brother? You know what I mean? They're not going to look at us in that way. And yet we grew up in this marginalized society of so-called colored people, for those who don't understand, mixed race, mixed heritage. You Muslim, I'm Christian, but we grew up together. We all, like, they put us all in this melting pot of, like, Southeast Asians who were brought as slaves, and African people and Europeans who mixed and became, over 300-400 years, whatever. And this is what us, you know what I mean? So, like, obviously you just said there before, because you light skin, you get the white privilege. And yet people like us, for me and you, like, since young, I've been politically more, I've always thought of myself as Pan-Africanist, and yet navigating this world and walking into certain conferences or, like, forums or meetings and stuff, and you like, black power, fight the power, fight the resistance, and all the brothers look at you like, huh? What's this guy saying? So what has that been like for you?
I think probably that's why anthropology really spoke to me, because anthropologists actually, even though I don't call myself an anthropologist, they're in that world between. They like this term betwixt and between. Like, you're not quite in, but you're not quite, you're like halfway in between. So almost like if you look at it holistically, colored people are like that kind of microcosm, because we have all these different identities that are meshed into one, forced into this idea that you were colored, that you're almost white, but you're not black. And you're better than them, but you can almost,
you're almost like us. Yeah, you're not like us.
Yeah, you're almost
better
there.
than them.
You're almost there.
That's why we had maids growing up and shit like that, bro. I mean, fucking hell.
Exactly. People still use the word maid. They won't say my domestic worker. Or the one they use now, which is even better, my helper.
My helper.
What the fuck is that? I get so irritated when I hear people say that, because, like, so they just help you, you don't pay them, or you pay them. Okay, so then just say my worker. There's nothing wrong with saying my worker.
When I found out what people pay their helpers over there, bro, it's like, how are people living?
So for me, like I'm saying, in the beginning, it was all about trying to show that I'm not white. So being extra,
because I did that as well a lot. I used to grow out my afro to try and keep it more nappy as possible. Stay in the sun a bit longer so that I could get a bit more of a tan.
Get a bit more red. Get a bit more pink. I've just it took a while for me to embrace it and just say, fuck, I'm dusty pink. And that's how it is. And what helped is finding out some of the historical facts, that traits like ginger hair, it's actually an African thing, bruv. And it evolved. All the traits we see in humanity emerged from here. It doesn't matter how far you go back. The fact that that so-called white people only existed for the last 500 years. And they created this thing of whiteness. And to, they had to justify everything. So for me, it's always about, I'm still always explaining myself in a way, especially when I'm teaching. They're like, but sir, okay, people that know, if they hear my accent, they're like, this one is one of the members. But I think it's up to you. How black do you want to be? Not in a way that you take advantage, like say, let me take advantage of my white skin and be black and chow both sides, but truly love it. Like acknowledge that people are going to see you as a white person. So when you have the chance to explain. Otherwise, just love your life. You are a black person. Why should you put pressure on yourself? Or you're not white. So why try and be white? Too many people are stuck. Or they'll say they'll always say to me, but I'm sure you must get all the white girls or white, like it used to always be a thing, like because people were chasing to say, if you get a white chick, you're like fucking, you're the one.
Because I mean, for us, but the thing is, in South Africa, the problem with us though, even though we look white, is that once we open our mouths, they know. Once that bushy
but
accent
that same thing, it's like an internalized thing. So if I think about myself, my own journey to, it's like, yeah, I've kind of had this idea, okay, this is the kind of person I have to go for, without thinking about actually what is my inside, what is my body telling me, what I'm attracted to, what. And because you have this kind of shaming you into, if you are with a black person, it's like, oh no.
Yeah.
If you're with a white person, it's like, wow, you achieved. And even if amongst us as so-called colored folk, if your partner is like dark skinned,
even if they are colored and dark,
it's like, oh, or you know what I mean? And even within families, I mean, just look at you and your sister. It's a perfect example of, or so many of us, that you have this in our families. And where really, you'll have this thing of black, white. The older people treat the light people nice, like your granny probably loved you, but wanted you to keep your hair short.
I was like I was the golden child of the family because I was so light. You know what I mean? Because I was the whitest of them all, and I had nice curly hair.
I look at the same with me there. Like even though my granny, she does love some of the dark ones. She loves all of the children, but definitely she loves me and my other cousin Razia, because we like the fairest, we the top, but like, and she's still like a hell of a racist. So I mean, my partner is Xhosa, so my son doesn't grow up thinking that he's colored. He knows he's black, and I'm grateful to like Black Panther, because like at least culturally affirming, so important. We never had that shit when we were young. We were looking up to Abu He-Man and all these other white people, and even if, I mean, it's just, we can try to change the narrative, but you're still fighting against a major thing, So it's about in those little networks, the music we make, the kind of art we create, the if we have access to education, the kind of things we research about our people. It's so interesting. I think if more people just focused on what they were passionate about, they could. But unfortunately, the global economic doesn't force you. You gotta put bread on the table, bro. So there's no easy way. I mean, you are a bit luckier, but we don't know what's your situation, because you're also in the arts. And arts, I mean, people will look and say, hey, Keenan's in London, he does it, and they assume. They don't know. It's month-to-month pressure also. Imagine not working.
It's impressions, you know what I mean? Because when people think, oh, London, they think the bloody streets are paved with gold and what. They don't know there's like slums here, and there's Owens that are hustling, and there's killing and gang violence and stuff going on here also.
So, but how far removed are you from that stuff?
Like in the beginning, I was pretty close. Like, you know what I mean? I loved in the ends. You know what I mean?
But how long have you been there now? It's a long
15
time.
years now, yeah, 2005.
So have you got your citizenship, or you still circling? They grant you permission? The Queen said, "I'm a boy."
It's just I haven't been able to afford it yet, basically. But I could have got it a long time ago. My wife's British, so I'm settled. I'm basically a resident. You know what I mean?
At least
I've got indefinite leave to remain, but they can obviously revoke that if they want to. I just say if it's safe. But yeah, I'm still South African by passport, and if I do get my citizenship, I'm gonna keep both. You know what I mean? I'm gonna do a deal.
Okay, you allowed to?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Well, I don't know now after Brexit, but now as far as I know, yeah, when I was going through the process, I had to like go to the SA embassy and like tell them that I'm still South African, and then I had to get the document to say that you know, I'm still South African, and then I have to go to the British people to tell them that I'm still South African so that I can keep my passport. So when I apply for my citizenship, you know, I can have a dual
So
passport.
you only go through this drama when your shit's expiring and you have to renew it, and then you wait for another 5, 10 years or.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been going, like, I've been indefinite. I've had indefinite status for a long time already. So,
Okay.
and my wife's British. She's born here. So,
Okay.
I mean, she's
No drama.
Vietnamese, but born here, you know. But yeah, I wanted to say, are you spiritual? Are you into any sort of, you know?
So I don't know. I guess for me, maybe
religion?
more on the Sangoma levels. I think, you know, over time, growing up, like I don't think I was like fully Muslim, but because
Did you
that
go
mixed
to
Christian
madrasa?
Muslim,
Didn't you have to go to
they
madrasa?
forced us. Obviously, they forced us. We had to go, and the others want to beat you up if you don't be fasting and shit. But I think over time, when you get free to choose, I think I was more pushing some Rasta vibes, and then I think more like maybe Buddhism. But then I was like, at the moment, I'm more like on some African spirituality kind of thing to say, okay, maybe I might get the calling. Like I stopped smoking ganja because the what do they call it? The auditory hallucinations were
No,
becoming
I
a bit too
understand.
extreme.
Also, I
I'd
haven't
have
been
to,
smoking. Also, like,
yeah. So
the
usually I'd like.
clarity, the clarity.
Yeah, usually I'd use like my hubby, but like now I'm thinking, okay, maybe I've got some kind of spiritual thing, but maybe as a interlocutor, guiding, connecting people. So one of my friends had like a serious. He's also like mixed race. He actually grew up in London, and then now with this COVID thing, he had some heavy like he was fucked up. Not COVID, but like fucked up. Blood was like white blood cells like messed up, and it was like a spiritual thing. So he was like, hey, and I connect because I know a few other sangomas and stuff. Not that I'm one, but I know people that are in that space, and then kind of try to put in together with the person, and then ended up connecting to another person who knew his dad. And yeah, so I think maybe, and plants, I'm way into plants now. Like I'm so attracted to plants beyond just dacha, like succulents and indigenous knowledge through plants. Yeah. So that's, I think, the next
But
move
the
I'm going in.
Celestine the prophecy spoke about the energy surrounding plants and
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. Okay, yeah. So maybe so it definitely does. If you take acid and shit, you can see that shit clearly. But
yeah.
I mean, like when you're not high, I mean, our ancestors knew all this stuff.
Yeah,
So
because like in the
it's
early
about us
morning and
reclaiming that knowledge.
in dusk, when it's dusk and dawn, I mean, I used to always believe that I can see auras around things like plants and
Yeah, you can, of course, man. But I mean, like, let's say plants, like real shit, like juicing it and just getting, because what's happening is that the settlers are controlling all that knowledge. That's a problem, you know. They've taken it, and they even like, I go to this thing, it's called the Succulent Society. So there's a whole society
like
around
succulents.
succulents. You know, South Africa has the most, like in terms of species. Bruh, we like,
I love
there's
them.
no other place that has more
um,
species of succulents than here. Like I think
plants.
out there's like maybe 100 or so species in the world, and about 30 or 40 of them only grow here. They can grow anywhere, so they like suited to the environment. They don't need that much water. They medicinal value, all of those things. And if they grow next to other plants, they take on their share characteristics. It's amazing.
Wow.
So I really want to try and that. If you talk about spirituality, that's where my spirituality is, through food, through sustenance, through So I used to use the Oka pipe to meditate. Now, not so much, man.
But what tobacco
like
was in it though? In the shisha part. What kind of tobacco were you using? Were you just using the molasses?
So just the usual, but putting some ganja in, you know.
Okay.
And even started some of my own pot plants. Gave some to my granny. My granny finally realized the key that she needs to start growing. I think because they said it's legal. So we grew some stuff. Well, I gave her some. They were on my balcony. It's too hot, but I gave her some pot plants, and man, they fucking flourished. So that's the Oma Shirley OG Kush. So
Oma Shirley OG.
made some oil, So trying to reproduce that same thing, and just I mean with the CBD, not necessarily always to get high, but to deal with depression, to deal with appetite, to deal with so many things, COVID, you know, like, I mean, it's bountiful. The problem is that it's always this capitalist shit. So even now we were researching, it's like 23 grand just to get the license.
And
but then you
also
need so many other things.
you can only do one specific thing with a license. You can't grow it
That's not,
for.
you can't even. That's just to start the ball rolling. You still have to pay for all the testing, the this, the that. It's probably close to $1 million in rand
Yeah,
to do
because I've been
everything. To
thinking
get
about this for
approval from the
years.
health department. Yeah, it's important. And that's our heritage, if you think about it. That's something, like, why aren't we being allowed to learn from this thing? It's like very prohibitive. It's like saying, hey, motherfucker, you better have $1 million before you
Or even the stigma
start doing
surrounding
anything.
Dacha, like, where we used to blow in Bosman there. It's like, don't go there. Those are just Dacha rockers there, by the park and what.
But I think people are changing because the law changed. So now
Yeah,
you're
they
allowed
are.
to have a plan. You're allowed. So now people are saying, okay, let me have at least one or two.
Yeah,
Because
I've been
people,
getting
even
my
in the
tummy
olden
into
days,
it. I got my mother. I've
they
got
knew
them
it's good for chest stuff. They
oils.
always knew. Yeah, people with cancer, there's such a great demand at all age levels, not just young people trying to get high. Old people saying, people realizing, mental health is important. Let me try some of this oil. Maybe I'm gonna just feel better. I don't have an appetite. And I'm on all these other medications. Let me take this thing to help me at least to eat properly. It's so important.
No, definitely, man. Definitely. Let me ask you these things. I got this little segment in here where I say when I. So if I say when I'll say something and then you just answer, yeah? So when I feel frustrated,
I guess I do smoke and drink. I get high.
All right. When I'm faced with ignorance.
I try to breathe, and I don't stop asserting knowledge over ignorance. I'm a firm believer. I can't let ignorance.
I know you're not a very easy person to argue against, bruh. So whoever faces you in that arena, they're gonna get chopped.
I suffer here. Sorry to take the thing too long. I suffer here because in the building where I stay, this whole body corporate, hey man. So it's like you're faced with ignorance all the time, like really, like on basic shit, like. And sometimes you just have to woosah and be like, okay, I'm in my little bubble. You do because it's too much.
All right. When I feel hungry.
Man, I love to. I cook up a storm. I think I'm a young master chef there. I'm catching lots of ideas. That's why I'm saying the indigenous plants are so important, because there's certain things that are happening there. So yeah.
Okay, and then
when I'm hungry, I cook.
when I feel
get
sad,
active. I get busy.
or when I feel sad.
Yeah, when I feel sad, music. I listen to music.
That's a good one. All right, man. Let's talk a little bit about the Camissa thing, man, because you put me onto that, and then also that led me onto a few other things. I don't know. Do you remember? I told you about Dr. Ruben Richards, and about bastards or humans. So people are starting to document the history of colored or mixed race, or so-called colored people in South Africa. And I spoke to his son as well on the podcast a few back, and he also gave some insight into this. And I think these things are starting to finally shape our identity, because as colored people, there was always this thing: we don't know who we are.
Yeah.
We don't know.
So I think I've got this book is the one right now. I think this guy had the blog thing, but I used to use his blog all the time. It's called The Lie of 1652. This guy really, because he's similar to us in a way. Old, he's a bit of an ANC guy. Old guy, looks like a white dude, but mixed, grew up Cape Town, got involved in the struggle, was doing like kind of in the ANC in exile in the camps. He was doing like the newspapers, the information stuff. So learned guy about the history, and basically goes and takes the same evidence, the ship logs, the diaries, and just when you have someone who's not white interpreting data, it's going to give you a different result. Like when we go back to those old anthropologists, they translating and then they putting what they want to put, or they're under pressure to put certain things, not to make the government look bad for killing the people or starving the people or abusing or stealing that knowledge, or stealing that knowledge or taking it without consent, right? So, it's so important. So I think it's a good start just to Google, because his blog spot basically has, this is just more in detail, but on his Camissa WordPress,
So
It's a good
that's the
start.
same guy who did the WordPress for
Yeah, he's the
Okay.
one. So in a way, I don't know if he came up with the concept, but yeah. So especially for certain things, if you look at what they call ethno-nationalism, so where you want to take a narrow thing and say, yeah, we Khoisan, and when you go to the history of the term Khoisan, it's some German white guy who came up with it. Now you taking that thing and you're pushing the same old colored thing. Yeah, before we weren't white enough, now we're not black enough. Bullshit. You
And
know,
now we
instead of saying,
Khoisan.
yeah,
And Khoisan is not
exactly.
even a
Like this
fucking
is
word.
our place. It's our place, you know, and that thing of this is our land, you know, type vibe. Julle swartes, you blacks came and did this. You only came using the same narrative the Afrikaners use.
Yeah,
To
it's
say,
like now
"Ish,
we use our
you
black
only
beef
came
Khoisan.
afterwards." Yeah,
We were here
exactly.
first. This is our land. And Khoisan isn't
Right.
even a
So that's
fucking
why
word.
this
You know
guy
what
is
I mean?
good because he problematizes that thing of saying, "Ish, who's indigenous? Who's the First Nation? Who's the first people? How do you actually, where's the evidence of these things and how do you, because even that thing of Khoi and San, there was many nations, not just, and even the word tribe is an invented thing. There's a very brilliant South African, a black anthropologist. It's called Archie Mafeji. They don't even teach this guy. And he's the one who said, hey, look, this word tribe, it was invented. So you can create that space to say, hey, you develop from a band, let's say family, band, clan, nation, like the levels of society when it's organized, when you know what I mean? And you create this tribe thing to say, all the blacks, we don't want to acknowledge that you were advanced, so we'll put you in this tribe basket so you can always stay below us as European nations and states. You understand? So I think it's so important the words we use. So
I've never thought
if you
about
want,
it
don't
that
use
way,
the
you
word
know?
Khoisan. Don't
Yeah,
say
because
Khoisan. Think about, don't say colored. Say so-called colored or say actually I'm a, for me, I used to when I started, like, no, I'm an ex-colored. You know, as I got conscientized now I'm like, okay, Camissa, that sounds a bit more like me. Yeah, that acknowledges all the different, it acknowledges my African indigenous ancestry. It acknowledges the slaves that came. It acknowledges the white folks or the settlers. But some of them, remember, those that mixed, they were not conforming to whiteness because whiteness said, don't mix with the people. So those of us that are carrying, whether it's the white skin or the white surnames, others are more cursed because they got Abo Van Wyk and Van Wat, but you know what I mean? You know, or whoever, you know, so those are things we can start off with in our identity journey to say, actually, who's the Baileys, who's the Choonaras, who's the Khans, who's the Van D, who's the Van Das, and you'll find there's many black surnames that became Afrikaans. Waterman, Stierman. There's no white people with that surname, and that gives you that sense to say, wow, these are actually our surnames. They just, because surnames is also a recent invention. People
Yeah,
only started having surnames like
Octobers and like a lot of us have the month of the
so
year, you know,
to get
for the
pride in it,
festivals.
because that comes from when the slaves came. They got that name, or they would have like where they were Van Boogies, Van der
Well,
Kaap.
I thought the months were the year that the slaves were purchased in or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So if you came in, yeah, exactly.
That's why most, like a lot of colored people from the Cape or so-called colored, October, August, September, you know.
Exactly. But there's no December.
I was gonna say,
Because there was no sales.
Is there
There's
July?
no December. Why?
Oh yeah,
Because there
there's
weren't second
February,
slaves. They were off.
January.
They took December off. December they were off.
Okay.
So they weren't buying and selling in December, and then they start again January, February. So you'll find there's all the months except December.
Yeah,
Crazy.
actually. Yeah.
And the great thing is that, I mean, I teach history. So in the curriculum, it's there. In grade 7 history, they teach the kids about this. But now when you've got teachers that are not passionate, or all white teachers, they don't want to touch those topics. So they're not going to go in detail. Like, let's say if me and you are teaching it, we're going to get involved because like, hey, or even the biblical names or old Greek names. Those are all our surnames. Abrams, Davids, Goliath. Those are names that they gave. They either gave them the month they came in, or they would choose some biblical or some ancient Greek. Apollo, Titus. Those are our surnames.
Yeah.
Base. Base is an interesting one because Base was this guy, white dude, who didn't conform. He ended up with like a Sotho wife, Xhosa wife. He was like the original voortrekker, moving from the Cape up north and marrying different people, and he had a squad. So you'll find there's Base Dorp, Base this, all people with Base surname. I can guarantee you they're not white people. Wow. Because this guy, like I'm saying, if anybody of us we just have to go and research. Go to your grandparents. Go to your if you've got whatever vignettes, little lines they are, you'll find there's so much knowledge and information in people that are still alive. And if you just dig a little bit deeper, you'll find a whole lot more. You know, it's so interesting.
Yeah,
But
I know my great grandmother was of Van Wyk. They from Uppington side, hello. And then my grandmother from the other side. Not the hairs. She was from Juggles, and that was from like Eastern Cape side.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You find, I mean, colored people are so interesting because so-called colored people are so interesting because you don't have to go far to find those things. In my case, I was a little bit lucky because my grandma, her cousin was a guy in the struggle in the ANC. So Chris Van Wyk, the author who's late, brilliant author. If anyone, you should read. Those are our people. Our people should read our people's books. You know, wrote brilliant author. Yeah, you know. Anyway, we can have a whole section on Chris Van Wyk, but he wrote a book about an autobiography, or well, a biography on my Uncle Bill. Uncle Bill is buried next to Walter Sisulu. And so when they did the research, he came and did the research and interviewed my granny. And they went further to find out, okay, this grandma you're always talking about, where did she come from? Okay, okay, she met up with this Portuguese, you know, and then you're like, okay, wow.
So then how did Islam come into it? How did your family turn to Islam then? Or?
So that comes from my grandfather's side. So his father was some Indian guy, came from India, like he was a half brother of the other ones who were already here. But then he hooked up with this colored woman. So the other Indian one stayed in Lens. He was in Sophia Town. And then that's how they made his Choonara.
And so what, he was Indian, like what, Muslim?
Indian, like proper Indian. So Choonara, and then I found out from this other, Chuna means lime. So Choonara means lime worker. So it's actually like from some part, I don't know, some part in India, I forgot what is it called?
Is it Gujarat?
Lajpur. That's the place they come from. So it's amazing. Usually you'll find the stuff on the men, but it's also interesting to look at the women, the grandmas, because they often the ones that go untold because patriarchy, they're giving up their surname, and even the surname they had was their father. So, but it's interesting in South Africa, a lot of times you don't get the father's surname because the dads aren't there. Migrant labor, deadbeat dad levels are just like insane. So usually, yeah, but it's a start. Because, you know, they always say you don't know where you're going unless you know where you come from. So it's so important just to get that pride. You know, there's nothing to hide anymore. You know, you can't, oh, my grandfather was a German. Fuck that shit. Talk about your what was your granny? You know, or your...
Your granny was probably Zulu. You're rather worrying about your German grandfather.
Most colored folks, it was that situation where they had to now shove to say, hey, we don't want to acknowledge the Tswana or the Zulu or the Xhosa or the what. So it's so important to read like people like Don Matera, who's still alive. And I mean, his book, Memory is the Weapon. The title says it all. Memory is the weapon. Go back and unearth those memories. Don't let other people tell you or put your identity or say, hey, you are colored, you are bushy, you are braino. Yes, it's fine if people want to take those labels. I don't have a problem with it. Me, I don't use it, but I'm just saying, you understand because we grew up in that culture.
Yeah, of course.
We use that word bushy, but it took me saying that to someone else who's also so-called to say, what's that? Because they don't use it, it's offensive for them. But for us here in Joburg, we just say, hey, I'm a bushy, you know? Meanwhile, for other so-called colored people, it's offensive. So how do you know what I mean? So acknowledging that, okay, shit. Even things like my haunt, I wear haunt. It's here we say that. Other places they don't because it's an insult to call someone a dog. You know, but it shows you like the urbanization.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the word like nigger, you know what I'm saying, bro? Like, honestly, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? People have adopted it now.
But who can say that? Can you, with your white skin, can you say that? Maybe to your brother. But
I've
if
never
you say
felt
out there during the people, they might not think that's so cool, right?
No, I've never felt comfortable saying it. And I mean, obviously...
So you should probably not say it,
right? Yeah,
right?
but that's what I'm saying, because we come from the hip-hop era of the 90s where it was like the whole consciousness and, you know, knowledge and, you know what I mean? Knowledge over conscience and stuff, you know what I'm saying? So you never say the N-word, bro. You never be like... But then so many of my friends, you know, in the hip-hop community still say it. Even the ones that are as white as me, they'll still be like, yo... Because they obviously, you know.
But now, where do you stand in a position to call that person out? But if you're still guilty,
I do, and I always have. In the same way that I would call my friends out on saying the K word, bro. Because I mean, kafir in Islam is a non-believer. But the way we use it in South Africa, like I remember some of my uncles saying it, or like my grand, you know. And
But would they do it? They'll do it in private, but will they do it in public? Never, because they know the amount of power.
Maybe now, but back then maybe they would have, you know.
Yeah, but no, still not in public. Think about it. Like in private, maybe, but in private all the time. Colored folks all the fucking time, but in public not so much. Maybe, but still, you know, you're gonna get sanctions now, even more sanctions. But it's about, yeah, you know, words are very powerful. So like, yeah, like you were saying about this Camissa thing, I think it's good if more people started using it, but you have all these competitiveness around things. They say people are now saying now we Khoisan. I'm a Khoisan. And it's okay because it's a step maybe in the right direction. Instead of saying colored, now they're saying they're Khoisan. It's better.
But there's a few of those, man. I see there's a brand, colored brand. There was Breno. There was
they still around. So if you look at, like, there's a political party now called Patriotic Alliance, and they zoning in on that fucking shit like crazy.
What,
like, yeah,
so-called colored though?
Like, look at basically pushing the colored vote, like being like, yeah, you know, we weren't looked after. We weren't that same. We weren't white enough. Now we're not black enough. No one has suffered more than the colored people. Bullshit, but yeah, you know what I mean. So,
you know why? Because yeah, no one has suffered more than us in our nice houses. Even like the flats in colored areas, bro, is not compared to like the squatter camps, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And even though there are people that's colored that stay in Hokkies in Cape Town, it's not that much. In Regenpark, in Joburg, you'll find a bit in Regenpark, but not that much.
Not Regenpark, you know? Like what's close to Orlando? What's the? I mean, the area. No, man, there's a bushy area like just before when you're going to Orlando.
Okay, yes, I hear you. North Face.
Yeah.
Noordgesig.
Noordgesig. There's township there, bro. It's proper shanty town and stuff, and it is.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, if you actually had a progressive, proper government, you can't have the shit in capitalism. I mean, well, you will have shacks, well, as long as you have capitalism, because there's got to be those ones willing to do the dirty work. And those are the people that live in the shacks, you know, that you're creating this underclass of people. And, you know, it's just terrible. I think if they were really serious, you need to just have like a proper socialism program on some.
Yeah, but I don't know about that. Socialism has always worked in theory, you know what I mean? And in practice,
you need a strong leader. Like if you look at Wade's work, you always had some fucking mega fucking strong ass leader who fucking pushes the thing. Whether you look at Fidel Castro, whether you look at Ho Chi Minh, there's your squad, Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. You should follow what's this, Luna Oi. Very cool YouTuber. I will send you the thing on WhatsApp. Very cool. Keeping it real on what's really going down in Vietnam, you know? Proper. Like, that's the content I love. It's not so pro-capitalist. It's like, yeah, this is what's really happening. All these people are talking about Vietnam, but this is what's actually happening in Vietnam. You know, with Thomas Sankara, 4 years he got assassinated. There's many examples of where socialism is working. Besides Cuba, Vietnam, you know, even China, Chairman Mao. You need that hardcore. Eliminate the fucking enemies, the bourgeois, those ones that want to keep capitalism. You got to uplift the poor. Use the peasants to mobilize. It's important, man. You got to, the basic decolonization thing is the last shall be first and the first shall be last. That's the, you know, you can't continue. This COVID thing and the environmental destruction is showing us, if we carry on the way we are, it's disaster, you know. And it doesn't, you don't even have to call it socialism. You can say social democracy. You can call it all, whatever you want to call it. Like the state, look after every motherfucking human. Make sure each motherfucker can get their full potential. It's not hard. It's just a matter of redeploying resources, which they don't want to do.
Yeah, because nobody wants to give up their Mercedes-Benz and you know, their nice.
They can easily, they can still have Mercedes-Benz. But you just, if you don't have roads, what's the point of having a Mercedes-Benz? If you don't have petrol, why are you having a Mercedes-Benz? Should be a fucking solar or a Mercedes-Benz that works with plants. Or you sit in it, you poo-poo, eat the shit, eat the cock, and that powers the motherfucker. You know what I mean? It cleans up the environment. That's the kind of shit you need. Not like, yes, there's enough of those things. But to make it practical. How practical? Public transport is way more practical. A bicycle is so fucking practical. Get some fitness, get to where you need to go. But the shit needs to be close by. Like, I mean, you guys are spoiled there. Everything is like within. You know, even if you want to be adventurous, you can go to the next town and you'll still find all the stuff. But that also shows you the wealth inequality in the world.
No, I realized that very early on here. Like, I remember when I first came here, nah, and we used to like go on holiday or something. Now, me, when I go on holiday, I always make sure I got my torch, I got my, you know, my knife, what. And then after a few years of going on holiday here in Europe, I was like, yeah, wherever I go, there's Wi-Fi. Wherever I go, there's lights. There's no way you can get stuck in a place where they're gonna, you know, you're gonna be stuck in some position where it's everything is everywhere.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, yeah. But bro, honestly, I think yeah, let's finish up. Do you have any like last thoughts or words or links you want to share? Just like leave people with.
No, just that I'm really proud of you, comrade, that you are doing out there in London town, in the empire.
In the
doing your
empire.
thing,
Standing strong in the empire.
Standing strong, doing your creating, you know what I mean? Your network. I mean, it's so amazing to see this wide network of people that you work with, associate, live with, dream with. And I think, yeah, man, let's push, man. You know, I think, and there are potential for practical things. And I think that's probably the next step for us that are in the advantageous space of having access to information, having our own places in a way, even if they're small, or, you know, having our own little garden, sharing knowledge, and pushing the plants, even in our small little spaces, and just document it, archive. We are the archive, you know, the body is the archive. You the archive, I'm the archive. We need to archive those things for our kids. Like Brad Don Matera said, memory is the weapon. And that's all.
Blessings, my brother. Away.
Away, away.
Away.